The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. I'm Liz Purnell, an Education and Training Specialist with the Institute of Child Nutrition, formerly the National Food Service Management Institute, or NFSMI as many of you may know it. And I would like to welcome you to the Team Up Thursdays webinar on introducing the 2015-2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans and helping students embrace healthier school meals through nutrition education. The Institute of Child Nutrition, along with its Applied Research Division, has collaborated with USDA to develop Team Up for School Nutrition Success, which is a unique learning experience that serves to enhance schools' food operations by providing tailored technical assistance to school nutrition programs that want to maintain a healthy environment and student meal program participation. As a follow-up to our pilot workshop last year, we have launched a monthly webinar series as a platform to further enhance partnerships and to provide an opportunity to all school nutrition professionals to discuss issues and provide solutions and best practices districts are using in key areas. You may have noticed that professional standards learning codes are listed on the slide for today's presentation. This is a one-hour webinar, and it is up to the discretion of the participant to choose which learning code is appropriate based on their training needs as identified by their supervisor or manager. ICN has created a website that will feature all materials and resources specifically related to Team Up. You can find the information at www.theicn.org/teamup. Today's webinar will feature several nutrition and education experts who will discuss best practices related to the newly released 2015-2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans and innovative strategies using nutrition education to increase lunchroom traffic and acceptance of healthier school meals. Now I will briefly introduce our panelists and we'll get started. We will start off with Dr. Tricia Pusota, who is a nutritionist with the Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion at USDA. Next, we'll hear from Angie Frost, who is a healthy living specialist at Purdue 4-H Extension and former nutrition educator for Crawfordsville School Corporation in Crawfordsville, Indiana. Our third panelist is Dr. Lucas Shivers, the Director of Elementary Education for the Manhattan-Ogden Unified School District 383 in Manhattan, Kansas. And last but not least, Tekla Coleman-Sloan, a nutritionist with USDA F&S in the Child Nutrition Division, Nutrition Promotion and Technical Assistance Division, will refresh us on using Team Nutrition as a resource. During today's webinar, all attendees are muted. Each presenter will have about 5 minutes to address questions following their respective presentations. If you have a question, please type it into the question box and address the panelists by using their name and inquiring about a topic or issue. Now, Dr. Pusota, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Great. Thank you. And I'd like to start by thanking the Institute of Child Nutrition and my colleagues within USDA's Food and Nutrition Service at Team Nutrition for having me here today to highlight a few of the key recommendations and findings included in the 2015-2020 edition of the Dietary Guidelines, in particular those that are pertinent for schools. Every 5 years since 1980, a new edition of the guidelines has been published. Its goal is to make recommendations about the components of a healthy and nutritionally adequate diet to help promote health and prevent chronic disease for current and future generations. The main purpose of the dietary guidelines is to inform the development of federal food, nutrition, and health policies and programs such as the National School Lunch Program. The current edition of the guidelines consists of an executive summary, introduction, 3 chapters, and 14 appendices. The focus of this edition of the guidelines is eating patterns and their food and nutrient characteristics. Before I dive into the 2015-2020 guidelines, I want to show you where Americans currently are at with regard to their eating patterns. As you can see here, trends in food intake over time show that at the population level, Americans are not consuming healthy eating patterns. And while the prevalence of chronic diseases such as obesity and diabetes has risen and remained high for the past 25 years, healthy eating index scores, which are a measure of how food choices align with the dietary guidelines, have remained low, with most recent scores being around 58 out of a possible 100. Here are the 5 overarching guidelines in the edition of the newest edition of the Dietary Guidelines. They encourage healthy eating patterns, recognize that individuals need to make shifts in their food and beverage choices to achieve a healthy pattern, and acknowledge that all segments of our society have a role to play in supporting healthy choices. Chapter 1 of the policy document describes the key elements of healthy eating patterns, and subsequently focuses on the first 3 guidelines, which are follow a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan, focus on variety, nutrient density, and amount, limit calories from added sugars, saturated fats, and reduce sodium intake. These 5 guidelines are supplemented with a number of key recommendations that provide more specific guidance on healthy eating patterns. The key recommendations should be applied in their entirety, given the interconnected relationship that each dietary component can have with others. Thus, the healthy eating pattern should account for all foods and beverages within an appropriate calorie level and include a variety of vegetables from all the subgroups, fruits, especially whole fruits, grains, at least half of which are whole grains, fat-free and low-fat dairy, a variety of protein foods, and oils. Also, a healthy eating pattern limits saturated and trans fats, added sugars, and sodium. Chapter 1 also includes discussion of quantitative key recommendations for several components of the diet that should be limited, specifically added sugars, saturated fats, sodium, and alcohol. These components are of particular public health concern in the U.S., and the specified limits can help individuals achieve healthy eating patterns within calorie limits. These quantitative key recommendations are consume less than 10% of calories per day from added sugars, consume less than 10% of calories per day from saturated fats, and consume less than 2,300 milligrams per day of sodium. The focus of Chapter 2 is on current food intakes and the shifts needed for Americans to align with healthy eating patterns. This chapter focuses on the 4th guideline, to shift to healthier food and beverage choices. What we saw in the 2010 guidelines continues today. The typical eating patterns currently consumed by many Americans do not align with the dietary guidelines. This figure provides a snapshot of current intakes compared to recommendations for the food groups and calories from added sugars and saturated fats, as well as sodium and oils. The center line is the goal or the limit. Each bar represents the percent of the U.S. population over the ages of 1 who are below, at, or above each dietary goal or limit. In short, the orange bars represent the percent of Americans who are not meeting the recommendations and show areas where room for improvement. When compared to the healthy U.S. style pattern, as you see in the top half of the figure, about 3/4 of the population has an eating pattern that is low in vegetables, fruits, dairy, and oils. More than half of the population is meeting or exceeding total grain and total protein food recommendations, but they're not meeting the recommendations for the subgroups within each of these food groups. As seen in the bottom half of the figure, most Americans exceed the recommendations for added sugars, saturated fats, and sodium. Also, it is important to note that eating patterns of most Americans are too high in calories. Chapter 2 provides a number of figures to highlight current dietary intakes compared to recommendations. Today I'm sharing with you those that show the foods and nutrients for which the intakes of school-age children do not meet recommendations. For each figure, the blue bar represents the range of recommended intake, while the orange dot indicates current intake. I have highlighted the intakes of school-age children with red boxes. This figure is for the food group and shows that the average intake of fruit is below recommendations for almost all age and sex groups. Children between the ages of 1 and 8 differ from the rest of the population in that they actually do meet the recommendations for total fruit. However, average intake of fruit, including 100% juice, is lowest among girls between the ages of 14 and 18. This figure is for the dairy group and indicates that average intakes of dairy for most groups are far below recommendations of the healthy U.S. style pattern. The average dairy intake for most young children between the ages of 1 and 3 meet recommended amounts, but all other age groups have average intakes that are below recommendations. And we see an age-related decline in dairy intake beginning in childhood, and this persists at low levels throughout adulthood. This figure is for the vegetable group and shows the low average intakes of vegetables across all age and sex groups in comparison to recommendations. Vegetable consumption relative to recommendations is lowest among boys aged 9 to 13 years and girls between the ages of 14 and 18. Vegetable intakes relative to recommendations are slightly higher during the adult years, but they're still clearly below the recommendations. Diving a little deeper into the vegetable subgroups, this figure is for the weekly intakes of dark green vegetables, which are below the recommended ranges for each age group, and quite significantly so for children between the ages of 9 and 18. This figure is for weekly intakes of red and orange vegetables, which are also below recommendations, but not to the same degree as dark green vegetables. This figure is for weekly intake of starchy vegetables, also below recommended intakes. And lastly, this figure is for other vegetables, which includes lettuce, onions, green beans, cucumbers, celery, etc. Collectively, these last few figures show that for the most part, the U.S. population does not meet their intake for recommendations of any of the vegetable subgroups, and that school-age children do not meet any of the recommendations for total vegetables or the vegetable subgroups. Now moving on to another food group, grains. For this figure, the blue bar represents the range of recommended intake for whole grains and limits for refined grains. Recommendations for whole grains and limits for refined grains are the same, both equal to 1/2 of the total grain recommendation. Here the orange dot indicates current intake of refined grains, and the green diamonds show current intake of whole grains. Ideally, the orange dots and green diamonds would both fall within the blue bars. Yet this figure shows that intakes do not meet recommendations for whole grains and exceed limits for refined grains. Average intakes for whole grains are far below recommended levels across all age and sex groups, and average intakes of refined grains are well above recommended intakes or limits for all groups. And for school-age children, current intakes are furthest from recommendations in comparison to other age categories. Overall, average intake of protein foods are close to amounts recommended for all age and sex groups. However, this figure shows that current weekly intakes of seafood are below the recommended weekly intake for each age and sex group, and that those between the ages of 9 and 18 are furthest from the recommendations. Moving from foods to nutrients, this figure compares daily intakes of added sugars as a % of calories across age and sex groups to the maximum limit of 10% of calories. The blue dotted line represents the dietary guidelines limit. The orange dots show current intake of added sugars. Current intake account on average for almost 270 calories, or more than 13% of calories per day in the U.S. population. As shown in this figure, intakes as a % of calories are particularly high among children, adolescents, and young adults. This slide shows the food categories that are the sources for added sugars for the U.S. population, with the primary source being beverages. This category includes soft drinks, fruit drinks, sweetened coffee and tea, energy drinks, alcoholic beverages, and flavored waters. This slide compares daily intakes of sodium to tolerable upper intake levels set by the Institute of Medicines. This limit is represented by the blue dotted line. The orange dots show current intakes are high across the U.S. population compared to the upper limits. Here, sodium is found in foods from almost all food categories. Mixed dishes, including burgers, sandwiches, and tacos, rice, pasta, and grain dishes, pizza, meat, poultry, and seafood dishes, and soups account for almost half of the sodium consumed in the U.S. The foods in many of these categories are often commercially processed and prepared, and they're also commonly used in school meals. USDA Foods offers a variety of lower sodium protein options and ingredients to help prepare these same dishes with lower sodium. For example, lower sodium cheese, pre-cooked chicken strips, pre-cooked beef burgers, and deli meats are all available and have lower sodium standards than commercial equivalents. Chapter 2 identifies suggested shifts that Americans can make in their food and beverage choices to move intakes closer to recommendations and limits for each food group and nutrient. Some of these suggestions include increasing vegetables in mixed dishes while decreasing the amounts of refined grains or meats that are high in saturated fat and or sodium, incorporating seafood in meals 2 times a week in place of meat, poultry, or eggs, using vegetable oil in place of solid fats when cooking, and using oil-based dressings and spreads on foods instead of those made from solid fats. Also, choosing beverages with no added sugars such as water, and using the nutrition facts label to compare sodium content of foods and choosing the product with less sodium. In general, Americans are consuming too many calories, not meeting food group and nutrient recommendations, and not getting enough activity. And we need collective action to support healthy lifestyle choices at home, school, work, and in the community. And as shown here in Chapter 3 of the Dietary Guidelines, everyone has a role in helping individuals shift their everyday food, beverage, and activity choices to align with the guidelines. Thus, the 5th guideline, Support Healthy Eating Patterns for All, is the focus of this last chapter. In the guidelines, strategies for action are provided for the different segments of society. For example, suggestions for schools are that they can continue to offer healthy food choices in cafeterias and vending machines, provide nutrition education programs in school gardens, and encourage parents and caregivers to promote healthy changes at home. The Dietary Guidelines is developed and written for professional audiences. Therefore, its translation into actionable consumer messages and resources is crucial to help individuals, families, and communities achieve healthy eating patterns. Myplate is just one example of this translation. Myplate has many consumer resources available at choosemyplate.gov that translate the guidelines into key consumer messages that are used in educational materials and tools for the public. New resources to support this last edition of the guidelines include the MyPlate MyWins tip sheet, the daily food plan checklist, and super tracker challenges. Also, 13 tip sheets from the 10 Tips Nutrition Education series, which is very popular, have been updated to reflect the dietary guidance in the 2015 to 2020 edition of the guidelines. In the next few weeks, we'll be launching a MyPlate video series, which translates how the average American can shift to healthy eating patterns. And we'll also have an educational video that's animated, which would be for perfect use in schools. On choosemyplate.gov, we have a communicator's guide, which is a resource to help you, nutrition professionals, create nutrition education materials and messages based on the most recent guidelines. This guide helps nutrition professionals speak with one voice and deliver consistent, accurate, and tailored messages that support efforts in schools, worksites, and communities. This guide helps translate the guidelines into consumer messages and provides best practices for creating education materials. In addition, the dietary guidelines are available exclusively on dietaryguidelines.gov, and in the coming months, a print edition will be released, and a downloadable PDF will be available online. ChooseMyPlate.gov and SuperTracker include many resources and interactive tools to help consumers learn about the recommendations in the guidelines and help them implement them. And lastly, to stay up to date, you can sign up to receive our email updates through our GovDelivery service, which you can access through the little envelope icon on ChooseMyPlate.gov. At this time, I'll be happy to take any questions. It looks like the only question right now is about downloading the slides or if there will be handouts. And the webinar is being recorded and a link will be emailed to everyone within 48 hours. Also, the PowerPoint presentations will be available. Okay, it looks like we have some questions coming in the chat box. So there is a question about how the guidelines are going to be applied to school nutrition. And I know that my colleagues within USDA in the Food and Nutrition Service will work to update the programs, and there are different recommendations accordingly. However, I can't speak to the specifics of that currently because the dietary guidelines did just come out, so there always is a little bit of time required to update everything and to get them implemented into schools. There also is a question about choosing healthier beverages and whether or not we should be promoting low-fat dairy. And yes, that is one of the guidelines, is about shifting to choosing low-fat milk and yogurt over cheese, because we do see when you break out the dairy food group that most people are getting plenty of cheese, but their intakes of milk or yogurt is low. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Angie Frost, our next panelist.
Thank you so much, Tricia. That was great information, and I think it really highlights why we need to be doing nutrition education in the classroom as well as in the cafeteria. And so today I'm going to talk to you about combining classroom and cafeteria nutrition education and some of the experiences that I've had over the last 10 years. So as a former nutrition educator for a small Midwestern school corporation, I became familiar with the team nutrition materials really quickly because generally I was working with a very small or even non-existent budget. So these team nutrition materials really help develop our nutrition education program. Team nutrition materials are free, they're always current and developmentally appropriate. The materials can be modified very easily to meet your time frame, your audience needs, and the needs of the classroom or the situation that you may be presenting the materials in. Some team nutrition materials are limited in the number of items that can be ordered at one time. So in the next couple of slides, I'll tell you about ways that I was able to make sure that all the students that I worked with had the materials that they needed. So team nutrition materials are based on the dietary guidelines for Americans, and they do meet education standards for science, math, English language arts, and health. And they're fun and engaging for students as well. So at the beginning of each school year, I would go onto the Team Nutrition website and order the materials that I needed for the year. And occasionally I would have to place other orders throughout the year, but at the beginning I made sure that I had all of my supplies ready to go. And those materials include things such as posters, handouts, and stickers, and I had dietetic interns that worked with me, and we would hand these out in the classroom as well as in the cafeteria to reinforce the messages that we were providing to our students. So as I said, I used team nutrition materials for about 10 years while working with the school corporation, and I started with My Pyramid for Kids, which I had great success with in grades 2 through 5. I adapted materials for younger audiences and used my version of the lessons in kindergarten and first grade, while also using the 2-by-Try Club book, which many of you may have been using or are currently using. During that time, we had a USDA Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program grant, which really helped us combine our nutrition messages from My Pyramid with fruit and vegetable taste testing that we did in the classroom as well as in the cafeteria. Our mission always was to keep our messages consistent throughout the school environment. The 2-by-Try Club book was first written using My Pyramid, but has since been updated to incorporate Myplate. So if you do have the older version, you can go to the Team Nutrition resource page and get the newer version that does include Myplate. And as the materials were updated to reflect the addition of Myplate, I switched to using to actually doing the Serving Up Myplate, a yummy curriculum for grades 2 through 5, and Discover Myplate for kindergarten and first graders. Team Nutrition website also includes posters and songs, handouts, stickers, and recipes, as well as links to electronic games and ebooks. So as I said, I most recently have used the Discover MyPlate materials in the kindergarten and first grade classroom. The materials include everything you need, from handouts that can be sent home to parents, to emergent reader books, a workbook for kids, and lesson plans for the teacher or perhaps a guest speaker who may be coming to the classroom, such as a dietitian or a food service director. In the classroom, dietetic interns and I use the materials by providing the students with a lesson featuring one of the food groups. After the lesson, the students were treated to a small sampling of at least 2 foods from the food group that we just learned about. So for instance, when we learned about protein, the students sampled hummus with pretzel sticks as well as black beans. For fruits, we sampled fresh blueberries and dried apricots, and for the grains, we tried whole grain waffles and whole wheat penne pasta. So for the final lesson, we brought the whole MyPlate concept together to illustrate balanced and healthy eating. The students were each given a toasted whole wheat English muffin half with peanut butter or perhaps sun butter if your school has allergies and limits the use of peanut butter. They also received shredded carrots and raisins and were able to create fun faces out of the foods that we had given them. And they also had a glass of milk with which to enjoy their completed MyPlate food group snack. So I do have some slides. I'll show you some of the pictures that the students, or some of the food students created with their snacks. A helpful tip that you might find is that for this lesson, it is helpful to have a presenter and a helper. So the presenter reads a book to the class or does maybe a small nutrition lesson over in the reading nook, which most elementary schools have, while the helper puts the snack ready. So at the end of each lesson, the students are given the emergent reader.
Angie, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Your microphone's cutting out just a little bit. Could you be sure you're as close as you can get to it, please?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at the end of each lesson, as I said, the students are allowed to have
Angie, we're still having issues with your microphone. It sounds like there may be a connection issue.
Okay.
Try one more time.
Okay. Is this any better? Or? So with the emergent reader book, the lesson of the day and handouts are included. And this is how
Angie?
Yes.
Angie, we're going to move on to Dr. Shivers and try to get your microphone working in the meantime, but we're going to move on because participants aren't able to hear you.
Thank you. My apologies.
Dr. Shivers.
Hello everyone, my name is Lucas Shivers. I work in Kansas as Director of Elementary Education for a 6A school district. I work with 9 elementary buildings. We have 2 middle schools and then a high school on 2 different campuses. We're really excited to share in this project and with our partnership with our food service and several other community organizations to just give a few success stories. The information you heard was fantastic, and it's more of a continuation of how we've been able to incorporate nutrition education to the benefit of all of our 6,500 students. So you heard from some of the others about how they're using fresh fruit programs to get fruit into the classroom for morning and afternoon breaks, how we do taste testing and food panelist events for students to be able to try new foods that might be different for them and their families to be able to try. We have a lot of creative menus where we try to cast fruits and vegetables in the most positive light possible and being able to find ways to create some momentum and enthusiasm on different types of foods. Our lunchrooms have a lot of decorations and displays, and we also participate heavily in summer feeding. We have multiple sites across our community and schools that open up to support year-round opportunity and access to good food. And we also integrate a lot of this into the general classroom. So we have teachers and students who are able to participate and partner in a number of different ways. This all came about from a district-level wellness team that supports goals in nutrition, physical activity, education, curriculum, and professional development, as well as some safety and sustainability. We set goals for students, for staff, and for stakeholders, meaning community partners that use the school as a hub of connection. So we wanted to share some of the sample goals that we cast 2 years ago with a district team that is being carried out in each building. Some of these are fairly specific, such as trying to move away from alternatives of candy and food as rewards to being able to holistically look at physical activity and other components. A big push was trying to showcase this with professional development time for teachers as well, so we always try to have a new healthy snack, whether that's hummus or chips and salsa, things that are able to meet the standards and showcase how we can easily integrate whole grains and other types of food into professional development time as well. This also was supported by our state level. We have a fantastic team at our State Department who's able to work on creating these model guidelines and opportunities to support us as practitioners on the ground as well. So we're really thankful for our Kansas team, Emily and Jill and many others who have been great. And just if you're needing any examples, feel free to look at this link from our State Department's website that shows sample wellness policies and different ways to go about achieving these visions for your districts and for your schools and students. In terms of curriculum, we are able to also use what you've heard about from the Serving Up Myplate and Discover Myplate. As you heard, these are fantastic, really strongly aligned to several standards, and we're able to offer them for kindergarten through 6th grade in lots of different settings, whether that's after-school programs or during the school day as part of the core lessons. We also have some partnerships that enable us to make this happen. One of those is with the Alliance for a Healthier Generation. They're able to offer 5 different training sessions spread out over 2 years where they will walk you through casting a vision and action planning and carrying out campaigns and events that support these initiatives as well. So a trainer will come in and be able to work with your teams. We really were blessed with this opportunity to take part with the Alliance for a Healthier Generation. We also have several local area partnerships that we couldn't do this without. They are able to, for example, the Flint Hills Wellness Coalition are able to provide people and resources such as grants to allow us to be able to carry out our vision. So these are great partnerships, and hopefully you're able to find some creative ways to get support for your buildings and schools as well. One specific opportunity that we wanted to share about was a program that we have called Improving Nutrition and Increasing Classroom Physical Activity of 2nd graders. So once a month, our food service department, this is our food service director and 1 other staff, go into all 2nd grade classrooms in our 9 buildings and cover an organ-wise and other curriculum that is physical activity, that's taste testing, that's different nutrition lessons. So it gets not only the teachers having an anchor point of other speakers coming into the classrooms to share, but also an exciting time for students. So we often hear that students are worn out by the end of their 30-minute workshop each month because they're doing so many different physical exercises, getting them up and moving, and it's a great opportunity for those fitness breaks to be practiced at other times. If students can learn them during this workshop, then they can ask for them at other times during the day and throughout the classroom lessons as well. Another key part are family events that take place after school, where we have different opportunities for the community to come together to support these efforts. Just a few other pictures to share about. We have Body Venture, which is a mobile lab for learning about how food is used to power and energize our bodies. We have a strong partnership with Fort Riley, which is a military base that serves our community, and so we have a lot of support with letting students learn about the Body Venture program. Have a number of school gardens that we work with through university cooperatives such as Kansas State University for us, and other research and extension university and programs. So these are some master gardeners who are working with sixth graders out at a garden featuring that whole farm to fork concept. So because we offer summer school at a number of these sites, these are year-round, being used year-round. We do have high tunnels and greenhouses at a number of buildings, and that allows us to explore different commercial crops and larger crops such as wheat and sorghum, but also specialty garden crops. And being able to have salsa gardens and herb gardens is a fantastic opportunity for students to learn holistically where food comes from. It's a passion of mine, being raised on a farm and being a fourth-generation Kansan, for students wherever their backgrounds are from to be able to have access to learn more about how our food is raised and how important it is. We have a number of other community events. This was a huge, more than 1,000 participants from students who bring their families, so it's a huge day in the fall each year called Body First, which is a gym in our community, and they have a school fitness challenge where students participate in fun runs and get healthy snacks, and we've crossed the threshold of having 1,000 participants complete this event the last few years. So it's been a great opportunity to feature wellness at a community level, and we're very thankful for our community partners being able to join us in this effort. A Fit 6 event is where all sixth graders from those 9 buildings come together to focus on 6 different concepts that can serve them in their middle school years as they're beginning adolescence. How can they take physical activity and nutrition, really something that they can practice in the future during those key years. So we're really grateful to come together at our high school stadium with several hundred students at the 6th grade year before they transition to middle school for their 7th and 8th grade careers. So just wanted to summarize, we hope you're able to set those ambitious long-term goals with your teams, not having to do this alone, but truly find partners to be able to work with. We wanted you to be aware of this really strong free content and resources and curriculum opportunities that are available so that you can really share the very best, latest materials. Hopefully you're able to also get some ideas on student-centered events that can really create excitement and a lot of motivation around these different topics, and then find plans for sustainability for the long term by building some great teams who are committed to this effort. So really appreciate being able to share just a few success stories from Kansas, and if you have any questions, we'd love to be able to talk some more or turn it back over to Angie or others. I'll let you decide.
Hi, Dr. Shivers. Are you seeing your questions in the chat box?
I do see one. There was a participant who said they had a 1-week study with 208 children where they put stickers of Elmo on healthy food, and they also offered not so healthy food without a sticker. So being able to helpfully find those alternatives, do we think it'd be a good idea to expand this research further? I think it always is positive to have those case studies of success that can be shared with many others to get momentum rolling. So if one teacher sees a successful practice from another, that collaboration can naturally be a really positive thing. So great question, and thank you for sharing about stickers in place of food.
Okay, we're going to move back to Angie. I think she's dialed in now and can finish her presentation.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Let me get my screen back up. I apologize for my technical issues today. Okay, let me forward to where we were before. All right, so we were talking about using the Discover Myplate materials in the classroom. Great materials, wonderful resource to be able to use for kindergarten as well as first grade even. So as I was saying, a dietetic intern would help me in this process because it does take a little bit of effort to get the snack ready as well as provide a nutrition education lesson to the students. So for the Discover Myplate curriculum, you are allowed to order one set at a time through the Team Nutrition resource page. So what I did was, as kindergarten and first grade teachers let me know of their willingness to have me in their classroom, I asked them to order a set of materials for their classroom so that it would be there and they would have the materials for 25 students. We had many teachers who had more than 25 students, so the materials that I ordered myself were used to supplement what the teacher had for their classroom. So this is a way that you can make sure that every student will get their emergent readers, that there will be plenty of handouts to send home to the parents, and that there will be recipes that everyone will have access to. And here's just a couple pictures of the faces that the students made with their whole grain English muffins, their raisins, and their peanut butter. They had a really great time making these, and of course every student wanted to have a picture taken of what they had created before they consumed it. So to reinforce the messages from the classroom even further, dietetic interns would generally create a bulletin board in the cafeteria that featured Myplate or some nutrition message of their choice. The bulletin boards in our cafeterias are very large, which allowed for great creativity, and I'll show you some slides of those bulletin boards here as we go along. So after the weekly classroom lesson, we visit the cafeteria during the lunch service to talk to students about the foods they chose or the foods they brought from home. This is a great opportunity to reinforce classroom messages, encourage trying new foods, especially new items that may be offered in the cafeteria, and make suggestions for a balanced meal. The kids love to see us and show us what they're eating in the cafeteria. For instance, students would say, "Mrs. Frost, I have a peanut butter sandwich," and so then that's a great opportunity to say, what food groups are those from? And oftentimes they were correct if they had just had the lesson, but it's a great teaching moment if they aren't necessarily correct in their assumption of what food groups they're eating. So sometimes the cafeteria monitors actually would get a little annoyed with us because the kids get so excited when we would come in that they would be not eating their lunch but trying to show us what they had. So I really secretly love to get booted from the cafeteria on those days. So now let's take a look at some of the bulletin boards that have been created in the past. This happens to be a bulletin board back from the My Pyramid days. You can see the grains on the left, followed by vegetables and fruits and the dairy group. And in between we have some Dairy Council food models as well as some other pictures of foods that I had collected over my time. And what we did was the nice little lunch boy in the middle, which I'll expand here for you, has a lunch tray, and we would take those Dairy Council food models and we would staple them onto the tray. About once a week we would rotate the foods around so that people, the students and the staff, could see what a healthy, balanced meal looked like, and it wasn't just the same foods all the time. So that was a creative way for us to be able to highlight foods that were new or foods that were being served that week. This Make Your Mission Good Nutrition was an idea from one of my interns. She was able to create this rocket ship surrounded by food information from each of the food groups, as well as physical activity information, information about water, and just generally leading a healthy lifestyle. Another favorite is the Fall in Love with Fruits and Veggies bulletin board that was done. And what we did here was I sent an email out to all of the staff in the building, from the custodial staff, cafeteria staff, our superintendent, and all the teachers and principal, and said, we will be in your teacher workroom on this morning from this time to this time, and we'd like you to come and have your picture taken with your favorite fruit or vegetable. So we had a variety of fruits and vegetables, both the rubber or latex kind as well as as real, fresh fruits and vegetables, and the teachers and everyone came and had their picture taken. It was a great day, and the kids really loved this particular bulletin board because it showed people that they see every day eating fruits and vegetables. Another Eat a Rainbow. My dietetic intern drew all of these fruits and vegetables, and it really highlights how fruits and vegetables really do come in a variety of colors, and they lend a healthy diet when consumed in lots of different colors. So we worked very closely with the cafeteria staff to not only provide taste testings in the classrooms, but also in the cafeteria, as you can see here. And on days when we did tastings in the cafeteria, we would try to decorate and follow a theme to make the atmosphere really special and extra fun. So this intern happens to be serving up salsa and whole grain chips on a Wild West day, where we also had, I believe it was chuck wagon stew and some cornbread. And on another day, we did roasted Brussels sprouts. We were happy to have more than half of our students actually accept the challenge to try the Brussels sprouts. And of those half, a full half said they really liked them and would eat them again. And as you can see in the right corner, it is very hard to read, but what we would do was provide some information about the origin of the food that we were serving, some fun facts, recipes, and then some physical activity tips. And these were also created as handouts so the students could take them home and share them with their parents. So nutrition education messages really must be consistent from the classroom to the cafeteria, to the home, and to the community. A strong wellness policy is really crucial, and having a fully invested leader, such as a superintendent or a building principal, is really crucial as well. I can't stress enough how important it is to have buy-in and support from those in leadership roles. I was fortunate to have a superintendent who truly believed that students need to be fed well and participate in physical activity in order to be the best learners they can be. A strong wellness policy and nutrition education in the classroom and in the cafeteria really helps support and reinforce those messages. So let me finish by reiterating that team nutrition materials are free, they're easy to order, and the materials arrive very quickly. You don't have to be a dietitian or even a nutrition professional to implement these in the classroom. So reach out to a teacher, a cafeteria manager, a food service director, and see if you can partner with them to be able to really expand the horizons of kids and give them some really great materials and some information that will help them grow and learn and be their best. So now I have time to take a few questions if anybody would like to type them into the chat box. I do have a question about, someone says it is very important to get leadership and buy-in. How did you do it? What happened for me was that I was actually a dietetic intern, and my school corporation was in the middle of writing their wellness policy a couple years before it was actually due, and the superintendent and I just really clicked. I was fortunate that she really was the one who wanted wellness to be the culture in our school corporation. So it was just finding her. We found each other together, but there's someone in every building, in every corporation who's passionate about this. It just takes finding them. So maybe go to a wellness committee or start a wellness committee. Let's see, are there any more questions for me? Okay, any more questions for me? You can type those into the chat box before we move on. One question says, do you have any curriculum material recommendations for preschool age children? The 2-Bite Try book, or 2-Bite Try Club book, is actually written for preschool children. It's a great place to start, and some of the Discover Myplate materials could be pretty easily adapted. Let's see. Someone mentioned that they often have times when teachers inadvertently send negative food messages and body image messages. That's very true. It is hard to overcome, and so some of that is also educating the teachers as well. So patience there and definitely more education. Okay, it looks like that is about it for my questions, so I'll turn it back over. And thank you for your patience during my technical difficulties.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hecla Coleman-Sloan, and I'm with USDA Food Nutrition Service. And I just wanted to do a brief recap about Team Nutrition materials. They are free nutrition education materials. The public can access them through our website. They can either download it for free or they can order it for free as well, as long as the school participates in the child nutrition program. Here's a hodgepodge of some of our many different nutrition resources. We have ready-to-go lessons and curricula for pre-K through 8th grade that meet national education standards for English language arts, math, science, and health. Check out our popular events booklet to find creative ideas and how-to instructions for 20 themed events for elementary and middle school. We also have available 8 new posters and Try Day and Launch Your Day with breakfast stickers that may be used as part of taste testing events or school breakfast promotion events. These stickers are only available to Team Nutrition schools, so schools should visit the Team Nutrition website to check whether they are a Team Nutrition school, and if not, sign up. Just newly released, USDA released 8 Team Nutrition Myplate ebooks for preschool and kindergarten age children. These Myplate ebooks include the 2 Bite Club storybook in English and Spanish and the 6 Discover Myplate Emergent Readers. The print versions of these publications have been widely popular, and the new ebook formats will expand their accessibility and interactivity. The ebooks feature audio narration and highlighting of story text, as well as interactive activities to promote literacy, engagement, nutrition knowledge, and adoption of healthy eating and physical activity behaviors. These ebooks are available for free download via Team Nutrition Resources Library website and also through a variety of online applications. Expected late this spring, FNS will release a resource kit for summer meal sites entitled Summer Food, Summer Moves. Each resource kit includes an operator activity guide with 6 nutrition education activities and kid-friendly recipes, 7 educational posters, 6 types of promotional flyers, an activity placemat, and a set of 6 different educational handouts for parents. In addition to the resource kit, FNS will release a brochure and infographic that school and community groups can distribute to parents to increase awareness of the importance of healthy food choices and physical activity during the summer months. The resource kit, parent brochure, and infographic will be available in both English and Spanish for free download via the Team Nutrition website. Printed copies will be available to schools and summer meal sites participating in child nutrition programs during summer 2016. Are there any questions related to any of the materials that I just spoke about? There was a question about, we're utilizing a lot of salad bars in our schools. Do you have any promotional posters and materials for that? We certainly do. I would encourage you to go and visit the Team Nutrition website, and actually it's categorized, and you can search for the audience that you're looking for to reach, or you can just browse through and click on each of the buttons and you can see what the materials are. But we do have many resources that relate specifically to fruits and vegetables. Okay, let's see. Are there any other questions? There's a question, are there plans to team up with CACFP. Programs that there are materials on the Team Nutrition website that are specific to CACFP. Again, I would just encourage everyone to go and check out the resources and see what may fit your audience. We also have, going back to the salad bars, we have the Dig In curriculum. Thank you for whoever reminded me of that. We have the Dig In curriculum. It is a comprehensive curriculum that can be used throughout the school year that talks about different fruits and vegetables, the nutritional benefits, a newsletter to take home, gardening. It's a fabulous, fabulous resource, and I would highly encourage you guys to check that out. Okay. We're getting close to the time. I'm going to go ahead and thank our speakers for doing such a great job and sharing the resources and really promoting the Team Nutrition material. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Liz.
Thank you, Tekla, and thanks to all of our panelists today. Before we conclude, I have a few announcements. The next phase of Team Up for School Nutrition Success has involved training additional mentors and state agency staff so that Team Up can continue at the state level. This training was completed in November here at the Institute, and implementation is well on its way. Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Illinois will be hosting their statewide Team Up workshops during the month of April, and other states are in the process of planning events. You can see scheduled state events for future months on the Team Up webpage under upcoming events. The next Team Up Thursday's webinar will be aired on March 31st, 2016 at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And please remember that all the webinars are recorded and can be viewed on the Team Up for School Nutrition Success website at www.theicn.org/teamup. Thanks for participating and have a great day.